How's it going today? Thank you for having me. Thank you to Mediapost, everyone who's organized this, the sponsors. This is my first Mediapost event, and it's been really, really fantastic. The kind of caliber of conversations and just talks that people have been really, really impressive, and I'm super grateful to be here. It's been a great day. To introduce myself, I'm Blayne. I'm the Associate Director of Acquisition at Policygenius. We are an online insurance marketplace. And our mission is kind of to help people navigate the really complicated world of insurance, variety of insurance products, and personal finance as a whole. We help them get the coverage they need, and kind of only the coverage they need. That's one of our big things, is we're not big on upselling things. We are really about getting the appropriate coverage for what people need to, insure themselves and protect their family. And we make them feel good about it. We're really, really proud of our NPS score. So we have, I think it's currently 83 is our 30-day NPS score. It's consistently been well above 70, which is like double the average for the insurance industry. Most people are not super thrilled with their process of getting insurance, and we're really trying to ease that burden. So today I kind of want to talk through one of our success stories. So we've had tremendous growth over the past few years, but on the paid acquisition side, podcasts are a place that are really, really special to me. We've done really well there, and it's something that we continue to scale, and I kind of want to share some of that with you. One of the big aha moments for me as an employee at Policygenius was, you work in a small tech startup in New York. There's a million of them. You go places, you go to meetups. Most people haven't heard of you. It wasn't until we've been on podcasts that was when people started saying, "Oh yes, I heard you on XYZ podcast." That was a big moment for me to have a name that people who are my peers were recognizing for not just my career, but just personally realizing that we were doing something special. So that leads to the title of the presentation, Podcast Famous, Unlocking Disproportionate Growth Through Audio Advertising. That speaks to the story I just told of feeling like we at least were a known name at that point. So kind of goals for the presentation today that I hope everyone takes away from this talk. If you're not very familiar with podcast advertising, or even if you are familiar, I've been doing it for a few years now, pretty well versed in it. I hope that we review some of the essentials and that you feel like you've learned something about the channel. But the other, I think, more interesting point is around we've been on podcasts since late 2017. It was a very, relatively early. It was kind of that, podcasts have been around for quite some time. Advertising on podcasts has been around for some time as well. But that was really the, key moment of when things really exploded in the podcast ad industry. And I think that podcast advertising is still good. If you haven't done it, you should try it. But also being on the lookout for that moment for other acquisition channels, I think is really, really important. It's something that I'm constantly looking for. I don't know what it is, so I'm not going to have what I think is the next thing to share with you all today. But keeping your ear to the ground about where people's attention is and where things might be underpriced or undervalued, it's really, really important, because I think that there's going to be another opportunity in the next few years, I think. And then, so how we're going to achieve those goals. First, I'll give you a little bit of a history of Policygenius as a company and when and why we started advertising on podcasts. Next, we'll do, kind of go through we've scaled the podcast channel a lot. We 10x our spend, since we started. It's one of, if not our biggest paid acquisition channel. It varies month to month, but it is a very high spend channel for us, and something that if you'd asked me 4 years ago when I started, I would never have thought that podcasts would be the place that we'd be spending most of our performance media dollars in 2019. And then what's next? As I mentioned, audio is still growing. It's still a good place to be. Podcast is growing, but I think there are other. I don't really like the term emerging channels, because some of the channels are not emerging. They've been around for a while, but they might be the places that if a lot of our other D2C brands aren't paying attention to, or our big brands aren't paying enough attention to, they could be the place where the arbitrage is good and it was worth investing in. All right, so why did we start advertising on podcasts? There's a lot of places. We all know that there are a million places we can spend our money. Lots of people trying to get our money. Everyone's promising different things. Why did we start on podcasts when we did? It was, we weren't spending, it was, like I said, we started in 2015. We weren't spending a lot of money on things still in 2017, and we decided to invest pretty heavy and early in podcasts. Why did that happen? Cool. So Policygenius in 2015. So So obligatory startup shot, that was our, it's not a WeWork, it's a Green Desk, which is even worse, but probably profitable shared office space in Williamsburg. I actually loved that office. We had a great view of Manhattan, but everyone at the company talks about it like it was total trash. Anyway, so that was basically our company in 2015, except for the guy behind the camera, who I think was probably our CTO. So who were we? What were we doing? So we had 2 to 3 products in our online insurance marketplace. I say 2 to 3 because disability insurance was probably dark at this period. That was we had a New York Times article that sent us so much traffic we shut the product down, which was great, but you know, a good problem to have. But anyway, so 2 to 3 products. Life insurance being our biggest one, still is. At this moment, we had spent $0 in paid media for customer acquisition. The reason for that is we had really good product market fit and organic growth. So similar to what the person from Bloomscape was talking about yesterday, we had a ton of content already, still have it. We promote that content and we rank really highly for organic keywords. It's still a huge growth driver for us. That investment has paid off for sure. But we knew that we weren't going to build the company we wanted to on that alone. So what did we do? We were trying to figure out where to spend our money. You know, the same thing everyone's talked about. We definitely tried digital first, paid search and Facebook, namely. But we ran a lot of ads, ran some digital ads. Nothing really worked the way that we wanted it to. This ad, it probably looks fine to you guys. I hate this ad. This was our top ad in 2016. We basically tried everything, like, you know, iteration to iteration. There was no brand behind this, in my opinion. Like, we had a brand, but it was not the brand that we have now. You know, we landed on money. You know, we tried all the, anyway, the thing that led to this ad was not something I was proud of. And the performance, while I say it was best performing, it was not that good. It was not hitting our growth goals. It was not hitting our CPA goals. The company was still growing, but what we were struggling to do was to find, okay, we're trying to raise more money. If we raise $30 million, $50 million, where are we going to invest in the next year, you know, in a channel that we're going to double, triple, quadruple spend? We hadn't found that. We were struggling. It was stressing me out. I had a new kid at the time. It was a dark period of my life. Then November 2016 came along. Everyone probably remembers that something happened in November 2016. It was an election year. And I think we just started hearing kind of like at events like this, at meetups, everyone started talking about podcasts, everyone that we were paying attention to. And we decided we're going to give this a try. So we built it out pretty quickly. And the things that we were hearing, the things, kind of hypotheses we had, and the things that have been validated since then is that the audience of podcast advertising is just so good. There is a natural, you know, age element to it. Like, there's some natural elements of the podcast advertising audience that fit really well with our product and what we were trying to do, which was bring the complicated world of insurance to, you know, what I call an ancient millennial audience. And so that's just natural fit. So really strong fit there. And the ad quality, right? I assume everyone's listened to podcasts. The ads you hear, people listen to them. You know, they don't. Yes, you skip them sometimes. I skip them sometimes, even though I like listening to ads now. But the quality and the integration is just so strong that the value of that impression, like calling it a CPM, doesn't even make sense to me, because the difference between a podcast CPM and like programmatic, it's not apples to apples, right? Like, I know there's efficiency to be found everywhere, but we're not speaking the same language when you talk about a podcast ad listen. And then what we found specifically for our business is that the lead quality is incredibly strong. So as we've measured the podcast channel, which I'll get to in a little bit, so as an online insurance marketplace, we're a brokerage. We stay with our customer through the entire customer journey. Lead is generated online, and then we're selling them to all the way through to enforce. So there's a lot of breakage between that lead being generated online and the sale going through. And you know, we learned over the years kind of the difference in, you know, how well does paid search convert, you know, essentially lead scoring by channel. Podcast is second only to personal referral in the quality of the lead, which I think speaks to the engagement that the audience has with their podcast hosts. When you have your host, you know, and people speak about it that way, it's their host. They feel very personally connected to the person reading the ads. It comes off like a friend telling you to do something, even if they're not endorsing it. And I'll get some audio examples soon of some of the hosts don't even really know what the product is. They're just joking, but it just works well and it's relevant. This chart is from an IID and PwC study that shows the size of the podcast advertising market. You can see kind of, some growth, but relatively flat through 2015, 2016. Again, the election happened. It's not that it was just politics that has grown the podcast channel, but I think it definitely contributed. And then just tremendous growth after that. And we got a little bit lucky in the way that we kind of fell into it at the right time and place. And so I want to, definitely point out that getting, I think, that kind of inflection point right before or right as something is really, really growing is a really good place to be regardless of the channel. So from there, we started investment late 2016, early 2017. How did we scale it? You need to be confident that the leads you're bringing in are quality, confident that you're getting good CPAs. Podcasts didn't have any digital measurement tools at the time. What did we do to continue to increase our spend month on month over 3 years? So the first is measurement. We use purely self-reported attribution for podcasts specifically. So this is a how did you hear about a survey. After someone completes the lead form on our site, we keep it updated with, you see a very long list of podcasts. It can be 60 at a time sometimes. I'm still amazed that I get no complaints from customers about how long that list is. I update it weekly, try to purge old ones because it's really important to me to keep it as short as possible, but as granular as possible. Other companies use a combination of, and a lot of you here probably do it, coupon codes, URLs, et cetera, to help track this. I wish that worked for us because we're selling insurance, which is like legally we can't offer a discount. There's just no reason for people to go to vanity URLs or put in a code. So we've relied on this exit survey. Luckily for us, I think because insurance is a fairly considered purchase and the lead form is long, asking this question at the end doesn't really upset anyone, and we have like 90+% completion rates on it with granular data. People are choosing podcasts and choosing the secondary dropdown. It feels very authentic. So that was what we built on. So if you're going to do something like this, you need to have a way to measure it. There are several ways to do it, but definitely, like, if we hadn't had this survey live when we started podcasts, we wouldn't be where we are today because we wouldn't have known what was working as well as we did. So from there, how do we scale it? So we had the measurement in place. We started spending. I'll start with that is our. I hid the numbers, but our actual spend data from February 2017 up till almost now, we have 10x our spend, and it's been consistent growth month on month, except for that one weird dip in 2018 that I have to look back and see why, because that was strange to me. But it's been really successful. I think our CPAs are better than they were when we started. Like it has scaled and improved over time. I think we started testing around 20 shows at a time. You can go really broad with podcasts. There are a lot of categories. If you have the right measurement, you can really, really test through things. And so we test new every week. I'm testing at least 2 or 3 new podcasts, if not more. And so kind of getting that rotation and that testing criteria down, finding what works for you, and then expanding from there is really, really important. So this is where we'll go over a few things that I review when I go over podcasts. 2 main types of ads. Host read versus producer read and or pre-recorded. So host read is your favorite podcast, either an ad break or just completely integrated. The host, his or herself, literally reads the ad. Highest quality, I'll pay double the CPMs for those, or even more in some cases. They are definitely a baked-in host read ad is definitely the best ad out there. That said, like some podcasts don't offer it, and we still run those. They can be good. Producer read is decent. It depends on the producer, but that'll be someone, not the host, but involved with the podcast reads the ads because for whatever reason, maybe the host is just a celebrity or something. He doesn't want to be, messing up their personal brand by reading a bunch of ads. There are also pre-recorded podcasts now. They're getting bigger, where it's basically like a traditional radio ad that you're inserting into the podcast, and that's where dynamic insertion comes in. So there's 2 main types of placements. Dynamic insertion is more like programmatic ad buying. So they chop the podcast up, have the ad breaks, but it can be almost any ad played inside of that, and that's when it's more like a traditional radio ad. Again, not the highest quality impression, but if the rates are good, maybe it's worth it. But baked in is where the audio from the ad, generally host read, is part of the podcast itself. It can't really. They might, depending on they can strip it out later if they want, but often you are on that podcast for perpetuity. So you got a guaranteed number of impressions, and anything extra is extra, which is great. And I see that some shows that are, news and politics are often very timely, but there are other shows that people go back and listen to for years, and having that baked-in impression is a good investment that could pay off for a long time. So this is one of the more exciting parts. What were people saying, right? We've run a number of podcasts. I wanted to play a few examples for you here. The ads are great. People love them. You can read some of the tweets if you want to start the first. This is from Pod Save America.
Pod Save America is brought to you by Policygenius. Many people don't know this, but September is National Life Insurance Awareness Month.
You know what? Following on the heels of National Will Month, there's been who said it? You know what? I feel like next year, guys in charge of Will Month and Life Insurance Month, let's put a month between them. Well, because August, September is dour.
It's a time to appreciate life and all the insurance it offers. We're not making this up. Before you revel in the festivities, let's take a moment to reflect on the true message of National Life Insurance Awareness Month. And that message is...
You could go at any moment.
The message is get life insurance.
Yeah, I bet it is.
The best place to get the life insurance that you need is Policygenius.com.
Policygenius.com.
They compare quotes from America's top providers, which can save you up to 40%.
Up to 40%.
Applying on Policygenius only takes 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Less time spent searching for insurance means more time to celebrate the spirit of insurance. In fact, Policygenius has placed over $5 billion in life insurance, and they don't just do life insurance. You can get disability insurance, renters insurance, pet insurance. If you've been thinking about getting life insurance.
If you've been thinking about it.
Check out Policygenius. In minutes, you could save up to 40% on a new policy.
40%.
They can tear up your old policies to make confetti for the insurance parade. Policygenius.com.
Huh? Hey, whoever's doing this copy for Policygenius, slip us a resume.
Yeah. All you other advertisers.
Yeah, take a memo.
From Policygenius.
Go check out what Policygenius is laying down.
You know, they have an important but dry product, and they have spiced it up.
They understand what we're trying to do.
They do.
We understand what they're trying to do, and it's a partnership.
And all I'm saying is others take note. So Policygenius.com, where every month is National Life Insurance Awareness Month.
Good for you, Policygenius. That was a delight.
So that's one of my favorite ads that we've ever run. I think the tweet on the top is probably referencing that ads from the same time period. And that was when we kind of realized, okay, we've been running podcasts for many months, but that's when I realized it was really special, that there was something really, really authentic about it. People were talking about it. They were telling us on Twitter they listened to the ad more than once because they wanted to. Really, really exciting, and that's when we kind of leaned into the channel. It leaned into custom copy from more partners, that sort of thing. And that ad, I mean, on its surface, it's very funny, but it's not a great life insurance ad. They stumble over the product words, like Lovett is off on a tangent doing whatever the hell he does. It doesn't. You might not think that that's like such a great read, but it's authentic to the channel. Like that ad doesn't. It wouldn't work on, another podcast, but it works so well for them and their audience. And that's when we realized we have to give people scripts that let them do what they do best. Because not everyone's funny, and that's not what works for their audience. If people aren't listening to a comedy podcast, they don't want to hear a funny ad. They want to hear something else. So Crime Junkie is another example. We can listen to that audio now. Much more straightforward, but sincere. True crime was a category I had stayed away from for a long time because I didn't want to come off.
Of my office job was our Employee Appreciation Day. Every month, we'd get an amazing catered lunch one day, and a talented baker would come in and bring these elaborate cupcakes and desserts, and we would play games and win prizes, and it was just a lot of fun. But probably not as much fun in retrospect, because it was only once a month and kind of a pain to lose a lunch hour that I could have spent listening to a podcast. So that was nice, and they also offered a complimentary life insurance policy for employees, but it was kind of limited. And I, for one, get super overwhelmed by all the options and terms and limits and just stuff when it comes to life insurance policies. And now that I have kids, I want to make sure that if anything happened to me, my family will be taken care of in the best way possible. And Policygenius makes it easy to shop for life insurance online. In minutes, you can be sorting through some of the top insurers and find the right amount of coverage for the best price, even comparing any life insurance policy your workplace provides and helping you decide what else you may need and what you don't. So workplace life insurance policies are kind of like workplace luncheons. A nice thought, but there's a lot more out there. Head over to Policygenius today and find out how to supplement your workplace life insurance and better protect your family. Policygenius. It's like a buffet made of life insurance, and what could be more delicious than that?
So I like that ad because we wrote the workplace coverage copy. It's a very complicated message to get across, right? Like in an ad. Like I can't do that in social, not effectively at least, in the ad itself. But it's an important message. Like that's how a lot of our customer base is. They think they've ticked the life insurance box off because they have 50 grand or 100 grand through work. It's not enough if you have kids. So getting that message across has just been super, super effective. And I love that a 60-second ad or longer can do that. And we didn't write most of what she said. We gave her the topic, and she just got it and really, really expanded on it. And again, that's why the ad is good, because it's a voice people are used to hearing, explaining the product to them in a really sincere way. Cool. So that kind of.
Pod Save America is.
There we go. We could have listened to that again, but we'll run out of time. So that is the reason why we've been on podcasts, why it's worked for us. But there is I want to know what's next. We're there's only so many podcasts I can run on that will work. We're still expanding, but it's going to cap out at some point. I want to know, how do we keep scaling it, and what else is out there? What is like what podcasts were for us 4 years ago? Is there going to be something that's similar? And that's something I think about all the time. I don't think it exists right this moment, but it will happen. So one thing is better tech. When I started on podcasts, I was actually shocked at just how unaddressable it was. I before I knew anything, I assumed there would be tracking like what is just starting to exist now, which is things like tying device data to an impression and then tying it to conversion. Didn't exist at all. The only way to track it was like you were tracking traditional media, bought very traditionally with direct relationships with the shows and networks, and tracked either by just finger in the air or tracking on your site if you have it, but it had to be all internal. Now, finally, there are several partners doing what is similar to digital channels, where they actually they get the impression level data from the devices, from the networks, and they put pixel on your site, and you get reporting that looks like this, that has the metrics you're used to seeing if you're running on Facebook, if you're running on display, if you're running on paid search, which is great. So there's pod sites, Verimetrics, Chartable are 3. There are probably more. I don't know. It's quickly becoming a crowded space. Someone's going to end up winning, but we'll see how it goes. But as of right now, I'm very, very excited about just that it exists at all, and we've been testing it out with some interesting results. I still rely heavily on our survey because that's what I'm so used to measuring against, but these are showing many, many more conversions, like several times more than what the survey shows. I haven't decided what I think is the truth yet. It's somewhere in between, but it's still really, really exciting to get this data point that ties the impression to the conversion. The other thing that's coming up is more competition. So this is from Magellan, which is another podcast tech partner. They actually they automatically transcribe podcast ads and then log them. But they look at major brands in the space. In April 2018, ZipRecruiter was the top, still is. The things I want to call out here are for me personally. Since we've started, there we go. 2 major insurers have started advertising as well. Geico and Progressive, huge ad budgets. What's great about podcasts is they can't be on the podcast I'm on, and I booked them before they did. So the exclusivity there is really, really strong. So while they're doing major brand plays, we don't have as much spend total as them, but I would argue that our advertising is probably more effective than theirs at the scale we're at. And that's because we've been very curated about the way we're doing it. But it's becoming a more crowded space, and it's something to watch out for. We have to be really, really cognizant of all the competition out there. And it definitely makes it, the barriers to entry are bigger for new brands trying to get in it because podcasts have those exclusivity relationships. If you work with an agency or a network, if a similar brand is already working with them, you're going to have trouble getting in, which is why, yes, you should try podcasts, but definitely the lesson of trying things that people haven't, that maybe aren't as exciting yet, is a good thing to try. Lower ad quality. So we heard what I think are the best quality ads, host read, baked in. This is from the same report I shared earlier, the percentage of baked in ads versus dynamically inserted in the podcast world. It grew from 2017 to 2018. 2019 is actually bigger. There are more baked in ads more dynamically inserted ads than baked in. This worries me a bit because I don't personally think the dynamically inserted ads are nearly as high of quality, and I don't want the channel to become too diluted by it. I'm not worried that much though, because it's not a zero-sum game. Like that baked in is growing as a percentage because there are new podcasts being added all the time. So the podcasts that have been around that have the capability to do it, they know HostRed works. They know that's how they're going to make the most money. They're going to keep doing it. So I don't think it's going away, but it is I would argue it's a different channel. Like HostRed versus baked in are very different forms of advertising. Both can be effective if the prices are right, but you got to be careful. Don't think you're not buying the same thing if you're buying DI versus HostRed. Cool. So lessons learned. This is my final slide. The overall, the main takeaway I hope everyone got from this is that the early investing in podcasts are great. Try them, or spend more if you're not already doing it. But the early investment has really, really scaled for us, and I think that there's a lesson to be learned there of don't be afraid to do things just because not everyone else is doing it yet. Setting up that proper measurement is really, really key. So not only did it help us measure podcasts, it let us do testing the TV, radio, a bunch of channels that we would not have been able to measure otherwise. Having that tool in place, which is a very simple tool, right? It's just a survey, and a lot of you probably already have them. But anything new you try, definitely work through the measurement side before you even spend a single dollar against it, I would argue. And finally, this is my biggest miss at Policygenius, is pay attention when people are talking. I mean, we're all here at a media event. That's what we're doing. But this was kind of outside of work. It was our CTO at the time, 2015. One of his icebreaker questions with me, so this would have been like June 2015, was, what podcast do you listen to? And that was a huge signal that I missed, which was a 30-year-old man right in our target demo at the company that I should have been thinking about it for, asking me, like, as an icebreaker, like, what podcast I listen to. That was the kind of thing that, like, if someone asked me that now for a new channel, like, I would be immediately at my computer trying to figure out how to make it work. So pay attention. And that's it. Thank you, everyone.
Blayne, thank you so much. We have some time for questions for Blayne. Questions? Yep.
Hi, Dan Kidd with Data Wallet. Just curious, what kind of reach are you seeing in the podcast audiences? Can you reach particular, older demographics as an example?
It's only by category. So, like, I know Pod Save America's younger audience. The networks will publish and share with you what they think the audience is. They don't know exactly though, and so I trust my gut on who do I think is listening to this. Look at their social media, that sort of thing. What we've found is that we don't need it. We know we do well with like 30 to 45-year-olds, but we also have older customers too. It doesn't have to be a certain age. So podcasts, I don't worry that much about the audience. I worry much more about the host, the authenticity of the ads. Like, I'm spending more time listening to the ads they read than I am worrying about the audience. Getting the price right? Like, obviously the CPM matters, but the real moment for me is when I listen to a few ads. I'm like, yeah, we can do something that works here.
If the host reads are so much more effective than dynamically inserted ads, what are the dynamically inserted ads good for? You said they're good for different things. So yeah, what are they good for?
Well, the price can be right. So, like, I pay a lot higher CPM for a HostRed ad because it's worth more to me. It can be several times more expensive, and that's fine. DI is good for, it's lower barrier to entry for both the podcasts themselves, because they don't have to get advertisers. It's similar to like putting AdSense on your site. You say, here's where an ad can run, my network can place ads here. And then if you're a big brand trying to spend on podcasts, you can record one or two ads and run them programmatically across your audience. You're buying an audience, not an individual podcast. It can be both, but you're buying the audience, which can be really effective. If you get the ad right, if your product works well there, I think it can be fine. For us specifically, I like the HostRed because we're selling a very considered purchase. People didn't know who we are. They didn't trust us. Having that host giving us the personal referral, I think is really, really strong for us. That said, DI works for us in some cases, and I think it could be really good for some brands too.
How many relationships do you have to manage here in terms of, how often are you dealing with individual podcast companies? How much are you working with how many networks?
So we work with, I'm running 80 podcasts a month and more. We work with an agency to manage the day-to-day work, and I recommend it in most cases. If you're testing podcasts, you can do it on your own, but just the clerical work of going back and forth to every podcast network is a lot. and the clout an agency has can help with pricing. That said, it's not really a requirement.
This is how I discovered you guys, is podcasting, and why I asked you to do this. Blayne, thanks so much.
Thanks.